Hello everybody, here we are doing the final video on staying sane amidst global crisis. I hope you're excited. Okie dokie, so the last video that we did was adjusting to the new normal, looking at our needs and how they might have changed or shifted and how we can kind of apply those to our lives going forward in this state of change that we're all in at the moment. And today we're going to look at scheduling skills. So this one I think I've procrastinated a little bit doing this video because I feel like I'm not exactly an expert in this subject, but and I don't want to kind of tell people things that they already know. So I've kind of decided to take a bit of a motivation, I suppose, kind of perspective with this one. So we're having a bit of a closer look at one of my favorite subjects, gamification and motivation, as part of that bigger picture of scheduling skills. Basically, when it comes to, our lives changing a lot, either working from home or spending more time at home, lots of the things that usually would kind of naturally cause us to have schedules and structure in our lives start to dissipate a bit. So when we're at home and we don't have those normal cues of, well, I better get up, otherwise I'm going to, not arrive at work on time, or I'm going to miss the bus. Suddenly the structure of our life starts to dissolve, and this actually can have a bit of a negative impact on our motivation and I suppose our productivity, really. So for those of you that aren't familiar, gamification is using the same principles that we find are motivating and rewarding in games and applying them to our real life in order to get that boost in productivity and motivation. So we're basically kind of manipulating ourselves for our own advantage. I suppose, we all hope, well, a lot of us are familiar with a chemical dopamine, which is associated with reward in our brain. Now, I've seen things that make me think that dopamine is more about the anticipation of a reward rather than once we get it, we get that boost of dopamine. So it's almost like we're manipulating these things to help us anticipate a reward, which is this state which we find very motivating. So that's kind of what we're aiming for here. And, we see we've got this picture on the right of progress bars, and this is kind of the epitome of motivating ourselves. So if you are 99% of the way through a task, we actually find it quite difficult to stop and turn off and not complete that task. We've kind of got this inertia behind us where we want to finish it off. And in fact, in Jason Fox's book, The Game Changer, which is a really fun book to read if anyone feels like it, the key that they talk about in terms of helping to keep ourselves motivated is to make progress visible. So we want to be showing as often as we can, that we are kind of getting through tasks, that we can see the progress that we're making. Even if it's hard to visualize that progress, we might write it down on a list or use tools like that so that we can kind of get this sense of moving down through a list of tasks and kind of build that momentum as we go. We find that this is really good. So the basic principles of gamification and motivation, according to Jason Fox and Daniel Pink in their fantastic books: purpose, mastery, and autonomy. So that's what we're going to go through today. Purpose. So in the last video, we looked at adjusting to the new normal and reviewing what our needs are, whether they have changed in priority because of all of these changes, whether there's an opportunity to kind of shift the direction that we're going in a little bit. Maybe I've always wanted to develop this skill, I've always wanted to learn this language, and some other things in my life have dropped off. And I can't do those anymore. So what am I going to fill that time with? Okay, well, look, maybe this is the time that I can learn that language. You know, or maybe it's, oh, actually now I've got, you know, lots of extra things on my plate, and I actually need to take a bit of a step back from some of those things so that I can focus on what's important. So I'm hoping that that last video has kind of covered this one for most people. We find that if we're kind of starting a task and we're getting this kind of procrastination, you know, ugh, I don't feel like doing this, what the hell, that if we kind of reflect and remind ourselves, why are we doing this? And, you know, really sometimes even thinking a bit deeply here, you know, why? Is it for the, you know, the paycheck at the end of it? Is it for, you know, our sense of satisfaction? Is it so that we can show off to our friends? You know, kind of reminding ourselves of what that's, what our purpose is in a task can be helpful, just to kind of push us over the edge and start and get going. This lovely quote on the right, I'm not going to embarrass myself by saying the name. He who has a why to live for can bear almost any how. So, you know, and that guy was in one of the concentration camps, and he talks about how, you know, he was walking in the snow and he fell over and he almost got, you know, shot in the head. But the sort of image of himself getting through the Holocaust and being able to share his experiences with others, that image kind of gave him the strength and the motivation to get up in the snow despite being exhausted and starving, to be able to get through that atrocious time in his life. And so that, you know, we don't want to underestimate the importance there. And sometimes if we feel like we're just going through the motions and we don't know why we're doing something, that in and of itself can be demotivating. So even if it's a bit of a superficial reason, reconnecting with what that purpose is powerful. So yeah, I stumbled across these diagrams and they're actually really fantastic. So we hear, when we talk about motivation and about this concept of purpose, we hear a lot about intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. So extrinsic motivation being, you know, the carrot or the stick, you know, the things that are external rewards or punishments. So, you know, you get paid for doing this, or you'll get a fine if you do this. So, okay, well, I'm bloody going to be careful not to do that then. And as we can see from this diagram, it actually reflects good old Maslow and his hierarchy of needs. So it starts off as those kind of base needs, you know, clear rewards or punishments. Then we move into the social side of things, just like in Maslow's hierarchy, where we want to fit in. You know, we want to kind of be accepted. Once we've kind of been accepted, then we want to, you know, go to that sort of esteem level where we want to be in a bit of a growth mindset. We want to learn, we want to grow as an individual. And then finally at the top, that self-actualization, where we're just kind of learning or doing tasks for the sake of them because we are enjoying the process of it, and we're learning this kind of, you know, the knowledge and the uniqueness of ourselves doing this task. So again, I'm not saying that there's a kind of a right or a wrong here, because obviously we all need to eat and we all need a roof over our heads. So it's not to say that it's bad to give ourselves or to be aware of extrinsic purposes as well as intrinsic ones, but having that awareness can be helpful. Just, you know, just to be honest with ourselves and kind of say, you know, oh, far out, I really don't want to bloody do this. I really can't be bothered. But you know what? I have to, because it's my aunt's birthday and, you know, it'll, you know, my mum will be upset with me if I don't. So, okay, fine. I guess I'll do that then. Yeah. I found this diagram from the same website and it's just brilliant. So the continuum of purpose. So first of all, following rules, you know, just conforming, making sure that we aren't, you know, doing the quote unquote wrong thing. We don't quite know what the bigger purpose is, but, you know, that's enough for us at the moment. And lovely little picture there of a child or a student kind of just doing what the teacher says and not really knowing why, just knowing that they might get told off if they don't. then to self-awareness, so, you know, learning about ourselves, and almost this kind of lovely experimental phase of what do I enjoy, what do I like, you know, what might I want for myself in the future. Maybe my purpose at the moment is just to learn about what that might be. And once we have a bit of a sense of, you know what, I love painting, you know, I love the colors, I love the feeling that I get when I'm painting. Then we move on to discovery, and it's, gosh, I wonder what, you know, different paints are made of, and I wonder what color combinations work really well together, and diving a bit deeper in, and then finally making a difference. And you know, we can almost kind of see it growing from, you know, just thinking about ourselves to thinking bigger and bigger picture. So I hope that you find that diagram useful, because I really like that as well. So maybe just take a moment here to reflect on what the purpose is of one of the projects you identified in the last video. So it can be any of them, it can be something really, you know, urgent and at the top of your list, or it can be something a bit further down, but feel free to just have a little bit of a think. And, you know, I mean, just taking the examples from a couple of games, you know, at the top one there is from Zelda Ocarina of Time. You've got a piece of heart. Collect 4 pieces of heart to assemble a new heart container. So there, your purpose is very simple. Assemble a new heart container, and that's your motivation for collecting the 4 pieces of heart. Underneath, we've got good old Tetris, and the purpose of that game is just don't reach the top. So it doesn't need to be complicated, but, you know, it can be helpful just to reflect and have a think about it. So feel free to pause the video and take a moment to do that now. Okie dokie, autonomy. So autonomy is just our right or the condition of self-government. So this is having the ability to make decisions for ourselves, and we can get into greater and greater levels of autonomy. So, you know, a basic level might be that I can choose whether I want to get dressed first, or whether I want to brush my hair first. You know, or do I want to eat my breakfast at home, or do I want to eat it on my way to work? You know, that kind of thing. But of course, we can go into these finer and finer nuances of, you know what, I actually find that you know, I work best when I do complicated tasks in the morning that take a lot of brain power, and then in the afternoon my brain starts shutting down, so I need to save the simpler things for then. So maybe at that point I'll do a bit of reading, or I'll catch up on my emails, or, you know, something like that, and it's better for me to put the kind of the hardest things on in the morning. It might even be that I know that I work better using a particular program, or using my screen in a certain way, or doing things in a certain order, or using one product rather than the other. This is a handy diagram that sort of puts it in the context of work. And it also, I think it fits in beautifully with what we've just been talking about, purpose. So if we were to swap the word alignment in that, in the axis on the left, and replace it with the word purpose. So basically we're saying, are you aligned with the purpose of your organization, or are you not? So if you have low alignment with the purpose of your organization and low autonomy, it means that you don't really care what your organization's doing. You're not motivated to do, you know, whatever the hell they're doing. You know, and also you're given very little control over your work. So, you know, that tends to be a situation where your boss kind of is micromanaging you, and kind of being really kind of strict about sort of insignificant details to try to kind of bring you in line. And, you know, it's like, oh, well, you know, tell me when you arrive at work, tell me when you have answered all of your emails, tell me when you finished the filing, now do this, now do that. You know, and we find that we switch off pretty quickly in that sort of situation. If we are, you know, very aligned with what our company is doing, and, you know, we kind of agree with the purpose, but it's micromanaging, then we are still kind of told what to do, but at least we're kind of doing it all together. So, you know, we need to cross the river, build a bridge. Okay, so that's what we'll all kind of do together. And, you know, we might find this in some, depending on some tradie environments, like if you're a trade assistant or something along those lines, where it's kind of like, okay, now do this, now sweep the floor, now, you know, mix the concrete, you know, that kind of thing. Very kind of micromanagey, but at least you kind of know, you know, what you're doing and why you're doing it. Then if we move down into that bottom right hand box, so where we have high autonomy, you know, the boss is, you know, giving us plenty of freedom, but we don't really align, we don't really know what we're doing. So then we're all just kind of, you know, doing our own thing. We do what we think is best, rather than necessarily, you know, what the company thinks is best. So this is kind of like if we have got lots of freedom over our lives, and, you know, maybe we've got lots of kind of activities to do, but we don't really know why we're doing them. It's kind of like all over the place, and we might start to feel a bit kind of frustrated or a bit kind of, yeah, just kind of aimless, I suppose. We're sort of just filling up time, but don't really know why. And so then finally in the aligned autonomy, where we do know what, you know, what our purpose is, we do know why we're doing something, you know, okay, we need to cross the river, but we can use our own interests, our own knowledge, our own kind of style of working to work out a solution. So, you know, I hope that helps to sort of put it into context there. So have a bit of a think about your own productivity and motivation habits. And so here are some, you know, questions to help us think about that. So what times of the day do you feel most energized and productive? Do you find that you know, are a bit sort of slow to start, you need a good lie-in, and then, you know, you do your brainiest work or most of your work in the afternoon? Or do you find that you're up and running, you get it all done, and then you kind of crash later on in the day? When do you feel like doing brainy work versus grindy work or physical work? You know, do you have times of day? Do you have preferences between those things? What types of breaks refresh you? Some people, they might need to kind of shut off to themselves and, you know, just kind of have a moment of doing absolutely nothing. For some people, it might be reconnecting with the why and kind of doing something that reminds them of the bigger picture. For some people, it might be doing something that kind of inspires their imagination on their break. For other people, it might be just reconnecting with people and, you know, just getting a bit of a distraction that way. Have a think about what are your favorite jobs and your favorite activities, and what do you like about them? Why do you like them? This is a really good one if we find ourselves kind of thinking, what do I want to do with my life? What kind of jobs do I want to do? What career should I have? And, you know, the best place to start is to think, well, what do I already enjoy? What do I choose to do when I've got a free day or a free afternoon or a free couple of hours? Or in my current job or in previous jobs that I've had, what have been my favorite parts? What have been the times where time just seems to kind of disappear and I'm just completely immersed in what I'm doing? Why is that? What was it about that made it like it? It's really interesting. If you could design yourself the perfect work schedule, what would it look like? So if, you know, your manager or, you know, the requirements of your job, the timing of your job wasn't an issue, you just had to do your job exactly the way you wanted to do it, what would that schedule look like? You know, some places that have been working from home for a while basically have what's called an outcome-based system, where the manager has almost, you know, no input into when you're working, what hours, what times you need to be available for, other than perhaps you know, an agreed weekly or fortnightly meeting. But it's all completely based on, okay, well, look, we just need this from you by this time. And so then they don't care whether you start work at 11 a.m. and finish at, you know, 1 in the morning and then take a 4-hour break in the middle of the day. It doesn't make any difference to them. You're just kind of working in a way that suits you. And while, you know, a lot of our workplaces that are just getting used to this might not be ready for that kind of thing yet, it's a handy thing to think about. And so, having thought about those things, have a go at writing a timetable that gets as close to that as possible, but that is practical with your current schedule. I know that it feels a little bit lame sometimes to write a timetable for ourselves, but this can be one of the handiest tools to give ourselves that structure, to have a schedule that gives us that sense of routine. It can be one of the best things that we can do for ourselves when going through a big period of change like this. I know that sometimes for some people it's associated with, you know, being controlled, a low sense of autonomy, and so it kind of puts them off. But just remember, this is your timetable and you can change anything whenever you want. Everything is a practice, everything is an experiment. But by writing it down, it kind of, it makes that sense of progress visible. We can see ourselves progressing through the day, doing the things that we said that we would do. And so this is a very useful thing to try, particularly if we're finding it a bit hard with motivation and getting things done that we want to get done. Mastery. Ooh, this is fun. I hope that you like a good diagram. We've got two diagrams here that basically mean the same thing, but they're kind of communicated in different ways. So good old Yerkes-Dodson, the diagram on the left. So this one talks about performance versus level of stress. So we've talked a lot about stress through these videos and how we want to have a balance, you know, that we wouldn't get out of bed if we didn't have any stress at all. But we don't want to have too much stress, otherwise we get burnt out, we get exhausted, all of those sorts of things. So we actually don't want to have a life that's free from stress. We don't want to have a situation where everything is just as easy as it possibly could be for ourselves, because we do get bored and we get depressed. And, you know, we're kind of unfocused, and it's just we're just kind of feeling frustrated, basically. But obviously, by the same token, we don't want to be going crazy with too much on our plate, getting burnt out. So we actually want to be aiming for this optimum level, this level of stress where we've got enough on that it's a bit of a challenge, it's kind of keeping us on our toes, but it's not too much. The diagram on the right is just another way of demonstrating this, where we have a level of challenge, a level of difficulty in our lives of, you know, things that we've got to do, you know, whether it's, you know, getting the groceries, making dinners, you know, paying bills, or jobs that we have to do, or plans that we have to make. And then we've got a certain amount of skill in those tasks. So if I try to, you know, operate a piece of machinery that I've never operated before, the challenge level is very high and my skill level is very low. So my anxiety is going to be very high in that situation, and I'm going to be in that too much stress category in the diagram on the left-hand side. I'm going to be too stressed and my performance is not going to be very good. However, if I decide, oh yeah, I'm going to, you know, count bricks, and that's going to be my job for the day, well, my skill in counting is actually quite high and the challenge is very low. So I'm going to be pretty bored doing that. And then I'm going to be in the too little stress category in that left-hand side diagram, and I'm going to get bored and I'm going to get frustrated and I'm going to have difficulty concentrating on it. So this is kind of like the life challenge, and this is really fun, where our job, you know, our main challenge in life is to set up things in our life that keep us in that flow channel on the right hand side, where our level of skill matches the challenge. So we have this kind of responsibility if we want to be in this state of flow. And sorry if you're not familiar with the state of flow, it's kind of that feeling where we are on top of our game. You know, we are immersed in a task. Time just kind of disappears. We are so focused on it. And we find that being in this state of flow, we get this, it's inherently rewarding, it's intrinsically rewarding. So it doesn't really matter, you know, what the outcome is. We don't need a trophy, we don't need money for it. We are enjoying that task and immersed in that task in and of itself. And if we think about games, you know, gamification, games literally are designed to increase the challenge as our skill increases. So, you know, we find that, you know, in a new video game, it starts off in a kind of training zone where you need very little skill, but then the challenge is very low as well. You can't die. And then you go into the next zone where the enemies are, you know, slightly difficult, but, you know, still pretty low, and you can just slowly build your skill up over time. So you're working your way through this flow channel. You know, and we can think of it in the same way as if we're, you know, learning an instrument or learning anything really, you know, that we start off learning the absolute basics, the challenge is really low and our skill is low, but if we carry on doing scales and nothing else, we're going to get bored pretty quickly. So we need to just kind of up the challenge every so often so that we can stay in that lovely, motivated, high performance place. So have a bit of a think here. Where are you? Where are you sitting? Is it too low or is it too high? Too high a level of challenge or too low a level of challenge for your current level of skill? Too high a level of stress or too low a level of stress? Now, this obviously can be different for different parts of our lives, but, you know, far out, I mean, you know, maybe try taking this diagram and writing down where you feel for different challenges, different things that are going on in your life. Maybe some things you find bloody boring and you kind of think, oh, for God's sake, I can't, if I have to do that one more freaking time. And then there are other things that kind of get your heart fluttering a bit and make you feel a bit scared. What are they? Where do they sit? Fascinating. So if you're finding that you're kind of in that too high a challenge area, too high a stress area, here are a few steps just to kind of help to wind it down back into that optimum performance zone. So the managing worry steps in, I think it was the third video, that video is really focused on this kind of space where you just feel like you've got loads on your plate and it's all a bit overwhelming. So feel free to have a look through those again if you want to. Prioritize recharging and self-care activities as though this is an essential task. These tend to kind of go on the wayside and they're ignored, but they are. But by reprioritizing them as something just as important as everything else, we put that space into our lives to regain the energy that we need to do the other things. If you're finding that there are a couple of jobs that are overwhelming, break them down into smaller steps and then spread them out between easier tasks. And then have a reflect about the ongoing things. What can be cut out, what can be paused, what can be scaled back, and what can be done differently. So this is a bit more about our last video, checking in with our bigger needs and our bigger purpose and sort of reevaluating what's important for us. You know, based on the autonomy section that we just went through, maybe you can still, you know, fit everything in, but just by tweaking the way that you do things. So at the moment, you know, I'm leaving all of my studying until the evening when I'm knackered, my brain isn't working properly anymore, it's not working for me. But maybe if I did that first thing in the morning instead, and I left going for a walk to the evening, maybe that would be a better use of my time, that would be a bit more efficient for me. So different changes here for different people. If you're bored out of your mind, if you're finding that you're too low on the challenge area, or you know, too low on the stress scale, and you're just kind of feeling a bit lethargic and unfocused, so I would suggest going through the last video, adjusting to the new normal, and kind of basically you're looking for it's almost like you don't have enough on your plate, basically. So having a look at what are our personal goals, what are our values, what can I introduce into my life, what is my next big challenge, how does it all fit in? And look, you know, if that's a hard question to answer, but you're bored, then maybe go deeper into it and sort of really, you know, do that word of the year exercise, do a values exploration exercise, do some you know, some career exploration tools, you know, all of these sorts of things. And, you know, if you want any of them, please contact me, because this is a really fun, fun area to navigate. If in doubt, if you're kind of feeling like, you know, oh, I'm just kind of bored, I've got lots of things that I could do, but I'm not really motivated to do any of them. First of all, just check in with safety and health. You know, are you getting, is your diet okay? Are you getting enough exercise? And make sure that, you know, your daily routine at least involves those. You know, there's no point in being bored around the house if you're, you know, not getting any exercise at all. You know, that's a really nice straightforward way to introduce that routine, that structure into your day, that's also benefiting your physical health and mental health as well. And, you know, once you've got that kind of list of things that you are interested in doing that align with your values, start one of them, start a new activity. Or if you kind of already feel like you've got some things going, but you're just not kind of motivated to do them, then maybe set some goals or challenges for those existing activities. Feel free to look up SMART goals for more tips on how to do this, if you're not quite sure how to set up a challenge for yourself. Sometimes we might think that we're bored, but it's actually because the thing that we want to do feels overwhelming, in which case go back to the previous slide and break them down into smaller tasks so that it doesn't feel so kind of frightening for us to get going into this task. And then finally, I know that it sounds dorky, I've said it before, but try writing a timetable to create some structure in your day. Even if you only have a small number of activities on, that structure can help us to sort of slowly rebuild that motivation, that lovely dopamine that then gives us the energy to do more things. Cool. So look, that was it. I hope that that was helpful. I hope that it sparked a few ideas. As always, please do leave any questions, comments, share to anyone who might be interested in this. I'm very happy to be corrected at anything that I've been, you know, done wrong, or if you have extra tools or resources that you would like to share that's relevant for this or any of the previous videos, very, very welcome. Thanks very much.